Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. We will start shortly. There are a number of attendees that are actually connecting to the system, so we'll just make sure that we have everyone on board and we will start. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, and welcome to this three-part webinar series. This series is a follow-up of the Air Pharma webinar that took place on October 6th. As the topic is of high interest and information required to ensure the right logistics is increasing. So AIDA's role is really as a communication channel to the industry to share any information that is made available. My name is Andrea Gruber, and I'm your host today. I will be joined by a number of speakers that will provide a different perspective to the topics and how working together will enable all of us to be better prepared to the upcoming challenges. Just a few housekeeping information. All microphones have been muted. The webinars are being recorded and will be made available after, including the PowerPoint on the AITA website. We will try to have a Q&A session if time permits at the end of the session. So please submit your questions using the question box. If these are not addressed in the session, we'll definitely post them on the AITA website following the webinar. Please take note that this session is conducted under the competition law compliance. So if you submit any question and there are some that will not be in a position to answer, this will be the reason why. Today's agenda, we would like to provide some different perspective. I would like really to thank everyone who took the time, to attend the session out of your schedule and allowing us to look into the transport of vaccines, life science product throughout the supply chain. All biographies from the different speakers are available on the AITA website. So to start this session, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Andrew Matters, AITA's Deputy Chief Economist. Andrew will provide us information on the recent development and the near-term outlook. Over to you, Andrew.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Andrea. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you today. I'm going to provide a bit of background to the more specific discussions that will take place through the rest of this webinar. Let me start with one slide which shows the impact that COVID-19 has had on the air cargo market. So the first slide looks at cargo volumes, and you can see, hopefully, there we go. You can see the sharp decline that we saw at the start of this year, very significant unwind. At its peak, it was a fall of 25% compared with the level of volumes a year ago. Of course, when we think about cargo volumes, we're talking about cargo ton kilometers here, just to be clear. Since April, which was that low point, we have seen some recovery, and that's been positive news. At the moment, we're still down about 12.5%. So in growth terms, we've managed to claw back about half of the year-on-year decline that we saw earlier in the year. To put this year's experience into context, I've shown quite a bit of history on this chart, taking it back to include the experience of the global financial crisis in 2008-09. And you can see there that the impact on volumes is actually quite similar to what we saw in the financial crisis, with a fall of broadly the same magnitude. If we move away from the industry level, we can look at this from a regional perspective. And on the next slide, we split that out. And here we're using region of registration. So that it's important to understand here. It's not the region where the cargo is flying to or from. It's by airline region of registration. Now this chart's a little bit messy, but I think it shows very clearly the different performance that we're seeing across regions. So you can see, for example, that in the case of North America and Africa, the red and blue lines here, cargo volumes are about back to where they were of a year ago. But it's a very different story if you look at that green line, which is Latin America, where volumes are still down around 30% year on year. So quite a bit of difference across regions. There are different drivers for that. You can think about the economic recovery, the status of international trade, and importantly, and particularly in the case of Latin America at the moment, the stage that the virus is at currently, because that's resulting in border closures and lockdowns and is disrupting some of the supply chains that we're seeing. Another way that we can look at this is by key market. So if we think about the major route areas, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this chart. As Andrea said, we'll make these slides available for you, and you can look at particular markets that you may have an interest in. What we're showing here on that vertical axis is the rate of growth, year-on-year growth in cargo volumes. And on the horizontal axis, we've got the market size. So on the right-hand side of the chart are the larger markets. You can see there the largest market is Asia, North America, where we've actually got some good news currently. Volumes are showing positive growth compared with a year ago. Not quite the same good news story for the two next largest markets of Europe, Asia, and Europe, North America, where volumes are still down 20 to 25% year on year. The fastest growing market at the moment, you can see on the far left-hand side, which is one of the smaller markets of Africa to Asia, which is showing double-digit growth of almost 20% year on year. One of the key stories at the moment when we're trying to understand and unlock what's happening in cargo markets, and this is important because it sets the current experience apart from what we saw in the financial crisis. So even though volumes have fallen by a similar amount, one of the main differences in this current episode is the lack of capacity that we're seeing in cargo markets. So on this chart, what we're showing here is what's been happening to capacity for both the dedicated freighters, which are the red bars, and belly cargo capacity, which are the blue bars here. So you can see if we look at the freighters first, freighter capacity is actually up almost 30% year on year. And we're seeing in terms of the levels of utilization of those freighters, they're at or very close to record high levels currently. The story is very different, of course, for the belly capacity. And you can see that for the belly capacity, if we just go back for just a moment, you can see that the decline for belly capacity is down around 70% year on year. So the yellow diamonds there give you the overall capacity industry-wide, and you can see that's fallen. So we're still down something like 30% in year-on-year terms, as the increase that we saw in the freighter capacity is more than offset by the decline, the weakness in belly capacity. So of course, there are a number of implications that come from this capacity shortage story, and we see that one of those on the next slide, which is the impact on yields. So the blue line here shows you the cargo yields, and you can see a sharp increase there. Unsurprisingly, the timing of that increase coincides quite closely with the decline in the cargo capacity, which is the red line here. So those yields have come off a little bit in recent months from their peak, but nonetheless, they're still up around 65% compared with a year ago. At the same time, the capacity is down around 30%. On the next slide, I've just included a quick table to summarize some of the developments. Again, I'm not going to dwell on this. This has come from our monthly air cargo briefing. And we've got a link here which you can check out at your leisure if more detail is of interest to you on this. If we think about that increase that we've seen in yields, one of the effects of that is shown very clearly in the next chart, where we're looking at what's happening to cargo revenues. Now, these have come from our forecast in June, so we'll be updating these in the coming weeks. But what you can see here is that cargo revenues have been on a long-term downwards trend to the point where in 2019, cargo revenues as a share of total airline revenues was below 15%. Now, with what's been happening with cargo yields, as well as what's been happening on the passenger side, we think that cargo is actually going to account for about 25% of total industry revenue this year. So a significant jump up. And this really underpins the critical role that air cargo is playing in terms of airline financials at the moment. In fact, for some airlines, cargo revenues have meant the difference between profit and loss over recent months. So cargo revenues aren't large enough, unfortunately, to offset what's happening on the passenger side, but nonetheless, they're a very important part of the story currently. If we look forward and think about what's likely to happen with volumes, cargo volumes in the near term, one of the indicators that we often rely on to give us a bit of a lead on developments in the cargo market is the export orders data. And you can see here that we've seen a sharp increase in export orders that hasn't yet been matched by the increase in cargo volumes, cargo tons flown. So you can see this suggests that we've got some further increase in volumes coming, and that's good news for the market. It's going to be very dependent, of course, on the capacity story and how the capacity plays out. But nonetheless, this is positive for the near-term outlook. And that increase in export orders, of course, is a reflection of the recovery that we're seeing in global economic activity. And so that's always good news for air cargo demand. The final slide that I have for you today focuses in on Air Pharma. And this slide comes courtesy of our colleagues in the Cargo IS team. They look at commodity level data, which is something that the economics team typically don't get down into that level of detail. Here we're showing both developments in terms of volumes on the left-hand side and prices on the right-hand side, or cargo rates on the right-hand side. And you can see that in both cases, pharma has proven to be particularly resilient this year, certainly in terms of what's happening with pharma volumes, which didn't experience the same downturn that we saw in those other market segments. Similarly with rates, all rates have increased, but those pharma rates have tended to hold up a little bit better than what we've seen in other segments as well. So let me finish on that note. I would just mention very quickly on the final slide that I have, we're constantly producing analysis and ad hoc research, and if that's of interest to you, check us out, iata.org/economics, or you can download our mobile app, which is 100% free to download and use, and you can select to receive notifications on that. So if that sort of information is useful to you on an ongoing basis, we'd love to have you join us. Thank you very much, Andrea. Let me hand back to you, and I wish you all the best for the rest of today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. This is very interesting information, and as Andrew mentioned, in a couple of weeks, updated analysis is made available. So don't hesitate really to reach out either through the website or the app that allows you to have the latest information that our economics team are putting together. Thank you, Andrew. Now I'm going to provide you a little bit more on the industry status with the regional input. Actually, as a follow-up of the Air Pharma webinar, we had a call to action on the Air Pharma webinar, and that really focuses on the collaboration. Collaboration is a key component for seamless transport and distribution of time and temperature sensitive controlled products and for getting ready and prepared. AITA has called for increased collaboration, cooperation, as well as communication, which are critical to ensure the continued flow of life science supplies and to move a vaccine around the planet in a safe and secure and controlled environment. More than ever, will supply chain stakeholders have to plan, prepare, and share information because of the levels of uncertainty, such as where and how the vaccines will be manufactured, as well as where from, where to, and how will it be secured and transported. The air freight industry has been handling and transporting vaccines, pharmaceuticals, and life science products for quite some time. So while our cargo processes are robust and the key role that air cargo plays in distributing vaccines in normal time goes under question, new challenges have risen, requiring them to be scaled up for exceptional volumes of vaccines to be handled and transported, but also to ensure vaccine shipment integrity, safety, and security. There are a number of existing considerations, which are non-exhaustive, of course, that have already been outlined and for which actions by the industry have to be undertaken. So some of the consideration is the fact that the industry is still suffering from the lack of capacity and global connectivity, availability of capabilities and specialized temperature control infrastructure, facilities and equipments, as well as dedicated resources, which are essential for a perfect flow of cargo. Custom authorities should ensure that all levels of governments and law enforcement remain coordinated to allow uninterrupted door-to-door delivery of these shipments. Security measures must be put in place to ensure that shipment remains secure from tampering and thefts. And on the safety side, for shipping dry ice as a refrigerant, the shipper must also be dangerous goods qualified, and the packing requirement must meet the AITA dangerous goods regulation. Also, collaboration and the use of existing road transport distribution channels for first and last mile need to be reinforced. What we'll do now is go and break it down into the supply chain, which is quite complex and fragmented. The COVID-19 crisis exposed the strengths and weaknesses of the different systems in place, which enables in turn opportunities and innovation. The upcoming challenge for the supply chain stakeholder is to plan and execute a global network delivery mechanism for the COVID-19 vaccines, as well as medical supply supporting that vaccine, unlike any situation experienced previously. Stakeholders are developing various scenarios today to preemptively establish processes and procedures in case of. Uncertainties have a great number of implications on the supply chain planning efforts, and the main challenge is certainly to respond to these uncertainties. So the first and essential element is communication. From procurement to distribution, the challenge is bringing coronavirus vaccines to the most in needs. AITA is working closely with humanitarian agencies such as UNICEF and the World Food Programme to help facilitate communication and awareness flows. UNICEF is leading the effort to procure and supply COVID-19 vaccine as part of the global vaccine plan of COVAX facility led by the WHO, Gavi, and Vaccine Alliance. As part of COVAX, WHO and Gavi have asked for countries to first prioritize frontline health and social workers, then the elderly, with a goal of vaccination of 20% of the world's population. But the challenge will be to allocate the vaccines to the countries and for those countries to establish the appropriate local distribution while keeping the vaccines cold from manufacturer to the end consumer. Humanitarian agencies are therefore calling for social responsibility, equitable access, and fair distribution of vaccines to protect people of all countries. So if we look at the first key stakeholder within that supply chain on the manufacturer side, today there are more than 200 vaccines candidates around the globe, among which 42 in clinical trials and few in the front runner. Industry is keen to understand where manufacturing is taking place in order to prepare efficiently the transport of vaccines. Industry is keen also to understand from manufacturers the product shelf life, efficacy, and number of doses of vaccines required, as it will impact the planning of weight, size, and volume of such shipments. Handling, transport, and storage requirements are essential information, as each type of vaccines will demand a different form of transport, packaging, and storage. In turn, manufacturers need to understand from the industry the existing constraint to best plan as well the airline capacities, trade lanes, and connectivity, in addition to airport handler and cargo terminal capabilities. Finally, ensuring compliance with regulation is essential. On this latter, today, there are existing logistic challenges with dry ice and data loggers, including lithium batteries. Ensuring stakeholders are aware of what can be achieved while ensuring communication with their freight forwarders and airlines. AITA is closely working with the authorities on seeking how the current regulation can respond appropriately to the large scale of upcoming shipments of vaccine. So being aware that dry ice may be required as a refrigerant for the vaccine, and to ensure that quantity limits on dry ice on aircraft can be addressed, AITA is in discussion with the FAA and the International Coordinating Council of the Aerospace Industries Association. This is the association of the aircraft manufacturer. AITA is also working with industry to ensure that all the requirements that apply to data loggers, particularly those powered by lithium batteries, are available. So the initial information that is provided from the shipper side will definitely impact on the rest of the logistic process and will definitely trigger the network planning. So on our next segment, looking at road and freight forwarders, global planning includes integrated multimodal transport to strengthen the network and the local delivery. AITA is closely working with FIATA on the multimodal aspect. Ground-based distribution networks will have to be capable of guaranteeing temperature integrity at destination, as well as the last mile delivery while the goods are secured. So what is to consider and communicate? Are interrupted temperature control management across supply chain, ensure appropriate and availability of road feeder services where applicable, coordinated and integrated transport solution and land-based infrastructure in remote areas, but also assessing with business partners local distribution with operational capacities, while reinforcing multilateral communication on services and capabilities. On this latter, the logistic provider are also very engaged in initiating discussions with their business partners to be as ready as possible to ensure secure and stable supply chains for vaccines. It is important that communication moves away from the historical bilateral discussion to a multilateral discussion so that all are aware, understand what is at stake, learn from each other, and make better use of the information on the environment it is operating. So now we are on the next leg of this next segment of the supply chain, airport and ground handlers. Both the infrastructure and the resources will be critical as countries prepare themselves for a massive vaccination response to COVID-19, impacting all countries and territories. Ground handling agents have often been seen as the weakest point in the supply chain, but they have been investing over the last years in quality programs and global solutions to meet the customer's demand and ensure the level of infrastructure and equipment capabilities. So what needs to be considered and communicated are availability of specialized temperature control infrastructure, facilities and equipment, dedicated, qualified and trained staff, planning on overall capabilities, that is estimating and evaluating the capacity of handling of storage facilities, as well as equipment, and assess ways to increase the capacities in a collaborative, cost-effective, and sustainable way. Temperature control dollies, helping maintaining the temperature control while the shipments are outside of the temperature control facilities. Accommodating inbound and outbound aircraft. But airport plays as well a key role in federating the stakeholders working on their platform. Their role is essential as part of establishing community to create consistency and uniformity. Tracking access directly to the aircraft and security protocols are essential to look into. It's clear and it's important to emphasize that those considerations are absolutely non-exhaustive, and there are further others that needs to be taken into consideration as well. So on the security side, there are security concerns that needs to be addressed, such as large volumes of high valuable commodity that need to be protected against tampering, thefts, counterfeit, and contraband. Although the air cargo industry already has processes in place, they will need to be scaled up for the volume of vaccines. So looking at the governmental and authority agencies, AITA's advocacy role led many governments and international regulatory bodies to facilitate the movement of air cargo. It is critical that international organizations such as the World Customs Organization or the World Trade Organization and countries continue to implement measures to facilitate and prioritize the movement of vital life-science supplies without disrupting the supply chain. In addition, government can increase capacity, for example, by supporting temporary traffic rights for operations carrying the COVID-19 vaccines where restrictions may apply. Government should avoid moving towards nationalism of stock pressurizing the airline and stakeholders to guarantee access to goods for their own people to ensure equitable and fair access to everyone. On border processes, consideration should be taken in ensuring rapid customs clearance, granting priority on arrival of those vital shipments to prevent possible temperature excursions due to delays, or considering tariff relief to facilitate the movement of cargo and support the fast processing of vaccines, pharmaceuticals, life science, and medical products at borders in a secured manner. In this connection, IATA is working closely with the World Customs Organization that has implemented a series of emergency contacts to minimize cargo border blockages and ensure these can be responded to immediately. IATA will be the focal point with the WCO if contacts in countries are needed. Regarding health authorities, they are key in accelerating the approval process and enable access to the consumer. Each country health authorities review the trial results and decide whether to approve the vaccines or not. However, currently, there are early or limited approvals that can lead to risk, especially from those countries that have approved vaccines without waiting for the result of phase 3 trials. So it is really crucial that the supply chain collaborates closely with government authorities. On our next segment, we have the airline, an important part when transporting vaccines, life science, and pharmaceuticals. Capacity and connectivity is and will remain a big challenge. The number of commercial flights have been significantly reduced due to travel restriction. This reduction of passenger aircraft has led dramatic decreases in belly hold capacity, directly impacting the air transport of all commodities such as PPE, but most importantly, pharmaceutical and life science products. The airlines have demonstrated agility, flexibility in extraordinary circumstances with increased cargo-only flights or cargo and cabin design in a short period of time. Planning to ensure safe, reliable transport and distribution is critical and can only be achieved collectively. Operation capabilities and aircraft capacity must be considered, namely, if the airline does not hold an approval to carry dangerous goods as cargo from their regulatory authorities, the airline would not be allowed to handle cargo such as temperature control containers with lithium battery powered data loggers. On aircraft capacity, for example, looking into space availability, quantity limits of dry ice used as refrigerant, or even setting the right temperature within the aircraft. On prioritization of shipments, many airlines have announced their commitment to the distribution of COVID vaccines. consideration must be taken to ensure to prioritize the movement of essential shipments, including but not limited to vaccines. These priorities should be clear at the time to the concerned parties and follow to the extent operational feasibility. Facilitating freighter charter is critical while considering areas such as feasible airport pairs or return of assets. Finally, process and procedures must be put in place to enable inter-airline operation where possible. If we look at those different considerations, these are global considerations. Again, these are non-exhaustive. If we have a more regional input, we can look at 4 different areas. First, on the coordination. Digitalization is essential through a real-time digital supply chain. That means end-to-end data connectivity to ensure transparency, visibility, and predictability. In addition, initiatives aiming at rapid and efficient access to governments in Africa is a good example of coordination, where the African Union, through the African Medical Supply Platform, has integrated vetted medical suppliers to ensure rapid access to affordable COVID-19 related supplies. Everyone involved must work closely in real time. Once distribution has begun, everyone within the supply chain, starting from the shipper until the tracking company at destination, authorities, local agencies, even distribution center, and the ultimate sites for vaccine administration must work closely together in real time. Looking at capacity and connectivity, Africa has been hit hard on COVID-19, aggravating connectivity challenges. From a connectivity perspective, Africa continent's air traffic for the whole of this year would be 54% below the figure of the preceding year. The safe restart of aviation and connectivity is crucial for the continent's connectivity and recovery. Withdrawal of capacity due to operational reduction by some loss-making airlines in the region will reduce connectivity in Africa, Middle East, like the limited cargo passenger flight frequency to certain destinations in Africa. However, the opening up of certain airspace to passenger operations has made belly space available, especially for smaller vaccines shipment. Lack of manpower at airports, warehouse, tracking aggravated the situation with travel bans, social distancing, lockdowns, and closures of non-essential businesses. The closures of manufacturing plants as part of the lockdown restrictions imposed worldwide has interrupted inland logistics, with first and last mile connectivity impacted, the industry stands significantly burdened. On the logistic infrastructure, airport communities consisting of various partners have been established in response to the pandemic and addressing some of the airport challenges mentioned today to ensure transparency through the supply chain and any needed effort required to ensure alignment and appropriate preparation. In Europe, task forces have been set up to ensure that visibility and bringing the business partners together to develop capacity analysis and concrete action plans, like at the airport of Frankfurt, Amsterdam, Brussels, to name only few. Sorry, I'm experiencing some issues with the presentation. Same in Singapore, where some of the task force has already been established. For example, Changi Airport Committee set up a task force to prepare for the impending vaccine distribution together with their local community to address potential bottlenecks and or challenges within the pharma air cargo supply chain. Ground handling warehouse capacity management for large volumes of pharma are being assessed. There are a number of ground handlers such as Swissport, Denata, WFS and others, for example, have also taken the lead in upgrading their facility warehouse in their network, mitigating the risk following AITA CIB Pharma certification. In addition, there are overall financial constraints companies face, not allowing them to invest in upgrading facilities to handle vaccines transport. This is a fact that needs to be known. And for example, in South America, there are low resources from governments to access needed temperature control equipment. Another challenge faced in some areas is the lack of temperature control areas for custom inspections if necessary. Finally, on the distribution side, lessons learned from distribution of PPE in early 2020 can help prepare for the distribution effort. The establishment of regional control and communication centers and the creation of a planned distribution network are being implemented in Africa. However, the capacity to deliver life-saving vaccines will be very much compromised, including the last mile. So maintaining the cold chain for coronavirus vaccines won't be easy. Many parts of the world lack the refrigeration to administer an effective vaccination program. This includes most of Central Asia, much of India and Southeast Asia, Latin America, except for the larger countries, and most in Africa. So one question remains, what will be the upcoming requirement? This is something that everyone tries to understand. What is defined upfront that will trigger the logistic planning and execution? This is where collaboration, coordination, communication efforts are undoubtedly the foundation of successfully achieving the industry's common goal. Success will depend on comprehensive and early planning, close and ongoing communication, and perhaps most importantly, the commitment to implementation. So we have a number of uncertainties where some elements are quite certain. The industry is preparing itself and tools are already available to be ready. In that, we have our regulations, the temperature control regulation provide a level of information and is appropriate to and was recognized to be appropriate to ship, handle, and transport temperature sensitive healthcare cargo during the pandemic. In addition, like with the WHO standards, non-standardized processes have a detrimental impact, and this is why minimum standards must be adhered to, or follow a quality-driven program like the CIB Pharma. This ends my presentation on the overall status of where we stand with the regional input, and I will invite our next speaker, Ronald Schaefer, to provide some insight on the risk-based approach in the preparation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrea. I hope everybody is well. Probably some of the participants today I know, and you know me, so I hope you're all keeping up well, you're safe, you're healthy, and managing to get through this very unusual circumstances. Thank you for your time today. I think Andrea just highlighted a lot of issues that require a lot of collaboration and cooperation among governments and different institutions. So I would like to emphasize on a couple of additional issues that you need to take into consideration when you plan to transport the vaccines for the COVID-19. I think one of the topics that has always been quite important and where you need to run your proper risk assessment is international regulations. When we ship our vaccines from one country to another, there might be different regulations in place. And as we have seen in the past, there's still a lot of misalignment among the different countries. Whereas AITA and others have been working on harmonizing these standards, differences still exist. So you need to run your proper risk assessment. You need to assess where you are, where you're shipping to, and what regulations are in place in those countries in order to make sure that there will be no hiccups or any problems when the merchandise arises. Packaging is another important issue. At this point, we're still unclear what kind of temperature requirement there will be to 8. Well, many talk about freezing, -60 degrees. So is it going to be an active or passive packaging? How will it be handled? Right now, under current circumstances, the current shipments are usually 80% shipped in passive packaging, whereas 20% are active. As well, and that is something that we have seen in the past, is the alignment among your different stakeholders. You're not on this alone. You have other partners that you work with and where you ship your merchandise to. So alignment among the different stakeholders to have same standards and procedures is very, very important. As we have seen in the past, one zone of high risk for temperature excursions that can take place is actually the point where the merchandise passes from one company to another. So an alignment in that area is very, very important, because temperature excursions is something that we need to avoid at all costs during the transport of the COVID-19. We all know we're expecting between 8 billion to 16 billion vaccines to be shipped, depending on the numbers of shots required. But there's always a risk as well that temperature excursions will take place. So we need to minimize those risks that those temperature excursions actually exist and take place, because it would require shipments and it would require more time than that everybody who needs the vaccine and wants to get the vaccine will actually receive it in due time. So this is something very important. In addition to that, the transparency is important as well. We are a lot of players, so we have to get aligned, we have to be clear, we have to be visible, and we have to work together. This is not something where we can just simply cook our own little soup, but we have to work because we need to minimize the risk, as I said before, of temperature excursions. So it's very, very important that the supply chain integrity is maintained, that we all go to similar procedures and standards. I mentioned transparency. I'll talk about that a little bit later as well, but transparency is important. The pharma shippers in the past have highlighted that there's not a lot of transparency in our industry. So can you please move back the slide? Thank you. Please, thank you very much. So we need to work together. we need to be clear. The pharma shippers need to know who we are. So I'll touch upon that topic later on. Conduct your proper risk assessments to get ready. This is all basically a risk assessment exercise that I'm talking about here, but you need to have a good methodology in place. You need to run proper risk assessments. You need to identify what can go wrong when you ship the merchandise, the vaccine from origin to destination, what can take place, what can happen, and what if it happens, even if you can only minimize the risk, how can you react? How can you mitigate the risk? What can you do if something that goes wrong? So you need to be prepared for that. Infrastructure and capability is another important issue. Andrea touched upon that point already. Just maybe food for thought, I just read in an Associated Press article yesterday that nearly 3 billion people of the world out of 7.8 live in areas where temperature-controlled storage is insufficient for running immunization campaign. So that is a very disturbing number, and that is something that we need to take a closer look at. Andrea, next slide, please. Thank you. So the availability of temperature-controlled facilities and equipment is absolutely essential. So it is time, if you haven't done that yet, it's really time to take a look what infrastructure you have in place. Do you have your own infrastructure? Does it satisfy all the minimum requirements for temperature-controlled storage? If not, is there something that you can do to mitigate that? Can you repurpose your facilities? Are there maybe other facilities out there that are not being used right now? It is very important as well in this sense to discuss with the government authorities where their distribution centers will take place, because you should be near those distribution centers as well, because close communication is absolutely important. So talk to your governments, decide where these distribution centers will take place, in what areas, in the hotspot areas, in high density population areas, or where you have a lot of vulnerable people living. I can only speak for myself, living in southern Florida. In West Palm Beach, we have a lot of elderly population. This is definitely an area that would require attention once these vaccines are ready for shipment. So the availability of facilities is very, very important, and that they need to be properly equipped as well. There are a lot of guidelines out there. The WHO has provided guidelines how to set up temperature-controlled facilities. So don't wait until the last minute. Now it's the time to do it. The vaccines, the shipments of the vaccines, the date are coming closer to us. So you need to be ready like that for that. Another very important point for the facilities is, well, you need to have staff that actually can operate those facilities. So number one, do you have enough staff in place? Will you have enough staff in place for managing these facilities? Don't forget that you might be in an area as well where there's a current lockdown going on. Staff might not be able to come to work. You would actually have staff that get sick, or has been diagnosed positive, not show up for work. So you have to make those contingency plans to be ready for when the vaccines are ready to be shipped. What you don't want has a fully functioning facility ready to go, but no staff. In addition to that, what is important for the staff, of course, is to understand the sensitivity of the product that they are handling here. We've seen in the past that not everywhere proper training takes place. Staff are usually not very conscious about the sensitivity. They're not properly trained. And then unfortunately, a lot of things can go wrong, especially in the form of temperature excursions. Last but not least, a building of robust monitoring capabilities is important as well. In many cases, you have to store the merchandise for a couple of hours, maybe a couple of days as well. You need to make sure that the temperature is maintained. You can even have a temperature excursion within a temperature controlled area if, I don't know, the system fails or the door to the facility stays open too long and a lot of heat comes in, depending on where you live. So this is very, very important to understand, that you have to have good monitoring capabilities in place. Next slide, please, Andrea. So how can you mitigate some of and all of these risks? Well, I think we're all clear that quality and product integrity is not something that we can really jeopardize. We need to comply and we need to follow industry standards. We mentioned them and Andrea highlighted them, they are out there. So you need to familiarize yourself with these different standards, make them part of your DNA. Now is the time to do it. Now get ready and keep it simple as well. Do not reinvent that. Don't make it too complicated. I think these guidelines have been developed by many experts in the industry. They have been proven, they have been tested in the operation for many years. So this is something that you should definitely start focusing on. Train your people, familiarize yourself with it. Let's not forget as well that vaccines are very expensive and a sensible product, and time is of the essence, I think, now more than ever. So build confidence, build up, train your people, look at the global standards, and show your confidence as well. Invest the time that you have. You need to avoid temperature excursions. You need to avoid any sanitary issues when you transport these vaccines. Otherwise, the whole logistics supply chain could get interrupted. Very important as well, always look for continuous improvement. If we have seen before, continuous improvement is something that we have to live with now, and we have seen it over the last couple of months. We just had to learn from things that we have been through, things that we have experienced, and we have to deduct the right solutions from it. So continuously work on your own processes, make them better, assess yourself critically every single time, ensure that everything that you have in place works. What might have worked in the past might not work now. Collaborate and get aligned with the industry. A lot of companies have their own experience. Talk to them, speak with them. You're not in this one alone. We're actually all working together. Collaboration is absolutely key. We are not competitors, but we're really, partners in this, getting the vaccines out to all the people in the world in order to make this COVID-19, if not disappear, but at least make us immune again. So share best practice, collaborate, and the sooner we might be able to ship these vaccines, the sooner we might be able to get back to a certain kind of normality to see it. So how can you achieve that? Please, next slide, Andrea. How can you achieve that? Well, we're all different stakeholders. I mentioned that before. You can harmonize your standard by working on your own. You can harmonize your standard by working in your network. Many of you have different locations, so you need to make sure that you're all aligned. You need to work with your business partners. If you're road transport, work with your freight forwarders. If you're a freight forwarder, work with the airports, work with the airlines, the handlers. You all need to get aligned. One aspect that we have seen in the past as well, and what has been quite successful, is if you work really in form of a community. I highlighted that before. If you work together with your partners, even with your competitors, you can achieve a lot. Get aligned, learn from each other, and get that sense of community, where you all work according to one standard. You will all benefit from it, and not just you as a company, but actually the recipients of the vaccines will be benefiting from that as well, because the more you work together, the more that you cooperate with your different stakeholders, the less likely it will be that there's going to be a vaccine. Just food for thought. You have seen already how long it has been taken to develop. You will see now how long it will take to get them ready for shipment, and it will take time. So if a shipment gets spoiled, if it doesn't reach the destination because of a degradation or temperature excursion, well, then it will take weeks in some cases to recreate the shipments. I'm not even going to talk about the money here, but these vaccines are expensive, and of course we'll have an eye on that as well. Food for thought. The most important part here is the well-being of the end consumers. They are all our, they are us. It's you and I, our family members. But again, communities are a good answer to that. Work together, and as we can see on the next slide, during the CIB Pharma program, we have actually been able to create some of these communities at different airports. It all started out in Brussels. in 2014, and currently we have about 26 communities at 26 different airports around the world where companies work together, harmonize their standards, take trainings together, learn from each other, share best practice, and even cooperate on a lot of other initiatives that can help and ease the transportation of vaccines or any kind of temperature controlled product. So I encourage strongly, if you are involved in the shipment of the vaccines or if you're planning to do so, start thinking about this approach. Start talking to your local stakeholders, talk to your authorities, and try to get aligned and try to create these communities. This is the best way forward. It works. We have seen it in other places, and it's something perhaps that should be adopted in other places now around the world as well. Next slide, please, Andrea. The CIB Pharma standard, as some of you know, and the one I have been managing for the last couple of years, has been quite successful. It has been implemented by about close to 300 companies on a worldwide basis. You can see that Europe is quite advanced. A lot of companies in Europe who are involved in the transportation of temperature controlled products are actually in Europe. So they were the first ones. We have been catching up in North America and in Asia, but you can still see that there's still a lot to be done in other regions as well. So the purpose of the CIB Pharma standard is to really ensure productivity, reduce temperature excursions, have a global certification in place, and elevate the staff competency levels around the globe. So if you embark on that approach, you will probably resolve some of the issues, or a lot of the issues that I have mentioned here before. So as you can see on the map in front of you, there's still a lot of work to be done, especially in certain areas. If you are based on those areas, you should start thinking about how to do, what to do, and how to approach this. And I think we've lost the slide. Oh, Andrea, there we go. Please move to the next slide, Andrea. All right. So harmonization is a key word. I've talked about it before. What are the benefits of a harmonized approach? Well, first of all, I think it will improve compliance. Compliance is very important. Authorities will take even a closer look now at companies operating according to guidelines and regulations. So when you have a robust quality management system in place, when you have a robust risk assessment system in place, you'll be in good shape. You'll be very able to absorb all the new regulations that might be coming out in the future. And the regulatory authorities will expect that from you. They're already expecting it from the pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical companies will expect that from you in the transportation sector as well. So it is very important. It will improve the handling and transportation of pharmaceuticals. Again, at the end of the day, the more compliant you are, the more confidence you will instill to your environment and your business partners that you are a serious and reliable partner to work with. Quality, we talked about it before, very important as well. It will improve quality. If you train your people, if they understand the sensitivities, if they're properly trained, they understand the procedures, they work well, that will definitely be an asset to your company. A well-trained workforce improves the quality, and at the end of the day will improve the end result as well. Mitigating risk. You need to, by harmonizing standards, you will mitigate your risk, you will reduce the risk, because if you're all aligned, if you all work together, you will be in a position where the risk that something will go wrong, especially when you transfer the merchandise or the vaccine from one place to another, will be absolutely less. So it will also allow to have globalized, harmonized audits. It will make the auditors it will make it for them a lot easier to conduct these audits, because we're all following the same guidelines, the same standard. And again, if you have a good proper risk assessment, as I mentioned before, in place, you will be able to identify a lot of the shortcomings that your current processes have, and you will have an answer in place if something goes wrong. Last but not least, visibility. Very, very important as well if you have a harmonized approach. It will help you to have, we need to identify who are the stakeholders here who are involved in the transportation of pharmaceuticals. I mentioned it before, there's a lack of transparency, but if you all work together, if you are all working according to one standard, there's a good opportunity that you all know each other, and that you only work with those who actually are aligned with you, and that will give you a lot of visibility and trust in the community. So the visibility of capabilities is very important as well. And I think there has been a lot of discussions about that because of the lack of transparency. Who are the companies who are actually engaged in transporting pharmaceutical products? Who are the right ones? What capabilities they have? And Yeah, in IATA, we have been working for that quite some time now as well. We had a very simple database for the first couple of years where we could highlight the companies that had achieved CIB Pharma certification. But now we actually have something better in place. And please, Andrea, take me to the next slide. Thank you very much. And it's called OneSource. So OneSource is our new platform that will be launched in November. It will allow the stakeholders to showcase their capabilities and basically inform the industry of what they actually have in place. So it is an opportunity to get visibility across the supply chain. So if you're in one place of the world and you want to find out what your what potential business partners in another world are doing, what kind of facilities they have, you can go to OneSource. You can see what kind of certification that company has from IATA. You can see validated facility and infrastructure information. So there is even an opportunity for companies who do not have a certification to upload information, to provide information, which will then be validated by the IATA team and confirmed that this information actually is accurate and reliable. So it allows the companies to demonstrate their competencies and their expertise. And yeah, it really creates a lot of visibility, and you will know who are the reliable stakeholders, who are the stakeholders actually you are involved with already for maybe many years, or who could be the potential new business partners in place that you want to have during the next couple of years. So OneSource will be launched by the end of November. You've seen, some of you have seen the press releases. I think it comes at a timely matter. Now more than ever, we need to know who the stakeholders are that are capable of transporting pharmaceutical products, especially vaccines for COVID-19. So OneSource, we hope, is one of the answers to that. And again, stay tuned. You can pre-register on our website already. And once it gets launched, you will be notified, and then you can proceed to uploading and registering all the information to capabilities. And with that, Andrea, I think I'll hand it over back to you.
Thank you very much, Roland. Thank you very much for that insight information in mitigating the risk. We're going to move to our next speaker, and gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Nicolas Caristo. He's Secretary General of the Cold Chain Association. IATA and the CCA has been working quite often together and quite closely for a number of years on different topics. And actually, we had the intention to formalize this collaboration back in March at the World Cargo Symposium with a signature of a memorandum of understanding, and to really set the framework of the common work carried out by the CCA together with IATA. Unfortunately, the WCS in March has been cancelled in Istanbul and delayed the actual signature of the memorandum of understanding. But now the MOU will be signed soon. And it really sets the basis of collaboration between both organizations to better assist the industry in improving the quality and handling and transport of perishables and pharmaceutical in the air cargo industry worldwide. So on that, I will let Nicolas share with you as well the industry perspective and what has been achieved by the members, initiatives that have been launched, and the lessons learned, and how the future is envisaged. Over to you, Nicolas. Nicolas, you're muted.
Yes.
Voilà.
Yes, voila. Voila. Thank you, Andrea. And yeah, even from my side, I'm very happy to be here. And even as Ronald say, I hope that everyone is safe and healthy considering the situation. I'm even also very happy to close this panel, this webinar, because I think that what I'm going to show with you perfectly fit all the things that we presented till now. So next slide, please. Okay, just a quick index that I'm going to, about the objective that I'm going to share with you. So a quick overview about CCA, so who we are, and the membership overview. Then, of course, I'm not going into details, but talking about our perishable project, the LAX initiative, because of course CCA is taking care not only about pharma, but even of perishable product. Then something about the vaccine distribution. We work a bit on the scenarios challenge. Then we see very quickly that the critical control point of the supply chain, and which is, in our opinion, the bottlenecks. It was already touched in a way in the previous slides. And then we want to be very practical, because I think that we have to. That there was a call in action, and we want to share with our members, but even with our stakeholders, a couple of tools we create internally, distribution change management metrics. Luckily, Ronald was talking about the risk management approach. We think that is even the moment exactly to have a change management approach. So we got these metrics, and we got even a project charter for change management for every aspect. And then, of course, I would like to share with you very quickly our workshop and follow up. Next slide. Thank you, Andrea. So again, a brief overview of CCA members. You can see them there. What is important to share with you is that you can see a bit, I think, that the graph on the left side, more than a half of the members of the CCA came from basically the airports, let's say, supply chain. So you can see airlines, ground handling agents, freight forwarders, and airports. Basically, they are together combining more than a half of our members. So this is even a reason why, and you will see later, we decided to be reliable and to concentrate our effort of this actual project mainly on the airport environment. So next slide. Thank you, Andrea. So, okay, this is a bit even exactly what we did in a way with our previous project. Of course, as I said before, I'm not going to give you the detail because it was on perishable. So we did it. We got the scope, of course, of the project. You can see there we got the methodology. There was a bit of degree hours, so to analyzing on the perishable aspect in this case how the shelf life of the product is affected during the lanes. The different type of loading, passive in that case of active containers, etc. The type of protection, the standards. Of course, as every project, we define the stakeholders that are listed there, and we will see later on that we will need it, of course, in every project. Of course, the 2 lanes that we work on it, and the result. Of course, I'm not going to tell you the details because it's not the case, but still, our idea in the very beginning, pre-COVID, I mean, was exactly to use exactly the same approach for pharma. But then, next slide, Andrea, the COVID situation came, and you know, even we saw, as per Andrew, very interesting data in the beginning of our webinar, how the scenario changed completely. We all, work-wise and personal-wise, know exactly what happened. So all our members, all the industry, all of us basically had to face what we call it the actual scenario challenge. Basically, we got this airline network reduction. All the stakeholders have to face with and to put in place contingency plan, because of course we still need and we are guaranteed as industry the so-called pharma, standard pharma and vaccine distribution. This is what very key, and I think that I even took note because I would like to highlight again with you when Andrew said in the beginning that we got something like 80% of reduction of belly capacity, and of course an increasing of capacity on all cargo flight. So the average you saw, all of us we saw it, is more or less 40% less. But it's not only the capacity, it's even the network, because of course even tomorrow, and then I'm going to be a bit in a way of the COVID-19 distribution scenario challenge, maybe we can have more capacity, putting on having, and there are even some figures on this, all of us we share something already with charter flight or all cargo flight, but then we will have even a bottleneck, and we will see it. So exactly what we are going to change and what we are going to manage in a while is the actual scenario with the standard pharma distribution, plus of course the COVID and vaccine distribution. We highlight and identify, we all know that the four points that we think that are a kind of input that we have to consider in our so-called change management exercise, which are the temperature requirements. It even was mentioned before. We all know that especially in the very beginning, we will have to manage a very low temperature for this vaccine as soon as they will arrive. Maybe in the future they will be more stable, and then we can go with the classical 2-8 temperature range. Then we got the packaging requirements, and even the packaging providers, solution provider are working on it. All the stakeholders are working on it. Forecast and quantity are even a question mark in a way. We got different, again, forecast and quantity, and of course, time frame. So next slide, please. So again, and I think that on the right side, all of us, we can recognize our beloved supply chain, and even as Andrea said, the air cargo supply chain is very complex, and we have to manage it. So we identify and we talk about the bottleneck. So of course, temperature requirements and packaging requirements, I was mentioning before, are something that we have to consider, that we have for sure to manage. But let's say, in a way, these first two aspects are managed directly by the stakeholders working on packaging solution, and the pharma company even working on the temperature requirements. So we can do it in a way, even as company. What for us is key, and we discussed internally, is exactly the airports. And even Ronald was mentioned before. We all know that there's not a harmonized situation globally respecting the airports. Of course, we were talking about the community. Of course, the airports that, especially the airports that apply and use the CIB approach, got an airport community live and kicking, so they can work on it, they can share experience and SOP, but still a lot of work have to be done and to be do and share between the stakeholders. So next slide. We decided, and we think that is the moment to change a bit our project, to not really to working on the lanes for pharma and for vaccine distribution, because we will do it later. But that was and is exactly the moment that we have to use this change management approach. I think that we need to be more in control within the airport community, or at least within the community, connecting more airlines and more ground handlers even, because again, for me, for us, it's very clear that every company, every single company in a way is ready and make this kind of exercise in his own network, and maybe hopefully with his own partners. But as soon as we will go and we will have to manage all these. Okay, sorry, I think that there was a problem with the mic. I was saying that I think that we have to work on this with all stakeholders working in the airport. So basically, we create this matrix where we put all the 4 points that I said before. I will show you before. So the temperature, the type of packaging, the forecast, and the time frame. Exactly per the point even mentioned before. So the facilities, warehouse operation, ramp operation, training, safety, security, supplier management, risk management, and quality. Exactly, so the same point that was mentioned before, and all of us, we are managing. We want to harmonize. I give you an example. I don't go too specific about the airport and so on, but we are participating and we are sharing some experience even with the airport authorities, for instance. And even in a case that the airport authority need to or want to, for instance, to build a temporary pharma storage for the vaccine, of course they have to be completely aware of the technical aspect as output of this the community approach. So how many square meters, which temperature, how many roller blade, how many plugs, and something like that. And last but not least, we had even to consider, as the overlapping of the two scenarios, how to manage the actual pharma and vaccine process and product, because maybe, of course, all of us, we're going to be concentrate ourselves and our effort on the COVID, but still we will have to manage in a proper way the actual traffic. So next slide. And that's it. And then, of course, even we are prepare some project charters. So, of course, for every area of the previous matrix, we have the possibility to share internally and to, of course, consolidate in a way within the association the approach, the detail for every area. Of course, you can read it. This is a classical project charter approach used in a change management way. In order, for instance, and even Ronald was mentioned before, because of course we're talking about training, but we were talking about the dry ice. So how to manage the dry ice? It's necessary to have some personal equipment, protection equipment. We need to change our training process. So these are exactly the point that could be shared between the stakeholders. It's not competition, it's just lesson learned, it is just improving the process. It could be shared, but even could have to be harmonized in a way. So if the airport authority is active, of course they can do it. A lot of example, again, I'm repeating myself, but even I think that we as association, we even can give our help and our contribution exactly to consolidate this kind of data. So with the last slide, basically, again, this is exactly, so I would like to share with you, because again, in the beginning, it was planned to have this workshop only for the members, because as I told you, we are working on it. We got already, we map and we plan already a few stations and few communities, a few lanes in a way with these two tools. On the 4th of November, we will have this workshop where exactly to talk about with our members about the actual pharma and vaccine transportation experience in combination with the COVID vaccine distribution scenario. I'm very happy, and even so, thank you again for AIATA, even to Andrea about our MOU sign. And the idea is exactly like that: is to create something practical and tangible within the association with our members. Again, I'm repeating myself, what we need, because we got the tools already. Even Ronald showed you, we got one record. So our goal is not to have the exact details, technical details of every station of every airport, but it's a bit to have the approach and to share experience in a way. And that we believe that this kind of workshop could be helpful even for not only for the members. So since I'm here, that I'm talking with all of you, you will have my contact even in the next slide. And if you would like to join, if you would like to share exactly as we said, it is a bit the core of this workshop. And even in the previous networking and workshop that we got, to collaborate and to really share experience, we will be more than happy to have you. So please feel free to contact me, and we can share with you these two tools and work on it. So I think that I'm exactly on time on this. So from my side, this is a bit everything. So thank you, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Nicola. This very insightful information, and I think the active work that your members are doing within the CCA. So don't hesitate to reach out to Nicola. As he mentioned, his details are available, and surely we'll make sure to have that MOU signed in a very shortly manner. In order to get the work ongoing carried out. I'd like to take this opportunity to just take a few moments to conclude this session. Interesting session. I know there is a lot of information that has been shared today. That's why don't hesitate to listen again to the recording if you so wish. The slides will be made available. But I think one of the information I would like to share with you is like we are facing unprecedented situation, and it needs as well not only an operational preparedness but a change of mindset. So in that, if we look at the supply chain the way I've described it before, maybe a supply chain possible solution is to work backwards in the logistic chain. And in terms of communication, and what I mean is like maybe understanding from governments, local authorities, or distribution centers at what speed they can ensure the local distribution of vaccines, and what are the warehouse capacities in terms of storing, while ensuring the safety and security of those products before they're actually are given to the end consumer, so that transport and those centers are made, the transport of vaccines is made in a phase approach to be handled appropriately. That means that looking from destination and working backwards across the supply chain to not have everything at once, but looking at a phase approach. And from what the different experts have already shared, this distribution might take from 10 to 18 months. So there is some still work that needs to be carried out. Just to finish as well, AITA has developed a guidance document that takes some of the information that has been shared with you today. That guidance document is providing accurate and rapid information to the industry. What is really important, and as mentioned earlier, when we get information is to share it. And it's really to minimize the number of potential distribution scenarios that stakeholders are currently developing, and really to ensure and meet the upcoming demand of vaccines, COVID vaccines, but we are in the flu season as well, pharmaceuticals, medications, and any health, life science, but especially as well humanitarian supplies. So this document is being reviewed by key stakeholders, key international organizations right now, and will be made available on our website. So stay tuned, because we'll actually as well look into a research analysis on the vaccine. On that, I would just like to share with you that that's a series of 3 webinars. The next webinars will provide the industry expertise. So we'll have different stakeholders on the supply chain providing us their experience in global distribution and the flow of vaccines through the supply chain. So we'll keep you informed on the next step, and a third webinar that is foreseen in the course of 2021. You have different places where you can get information, on the cargo website, and as well on the transportation of vaccines, where a lot of information has been shared as well today is made available. I'd like really to thank all the presenters today for sharing the valuable information. I would like to thank everyone that has joined today, we hadn't the time to go through a Q&A session, but don't hesitate, those questions will be answered and posted on the AITA website. I would like as well to give a big thank you to my colleague, Maria Jitomiski, who has put together the series of webinars, and we're working together, and I look forward on the next webinar with the different stakeholders sharing their experience. So again, thank you very much for all in joining this session. Let me wish you good work in preparing for what comes in front of us in terms of vaccines, life science, pharmaceuticals. But what is most important all, please keep safe, and in the meantime, have a very nice day or evening. Goodbye. Thank you very much.